As ex-partners in crime.
That's that red light's sit on his arm. That's all running now. So you can pitch in and start off when you joined up, if it was national service or you know what made you decide to go in the RAF, and carry on through into your training and that sort of thing, if you like. That's ready as soon as you are.
Well, I've always been interested in aircraft before the war, and I joined up when I was called up, and I went to the place where you had to join, and I told them they wanted to know what I wanted to do. I said, well, I wanted to fly. So I entered as an air gunner, wireless operator. Then, after a wait, a long time, I thought they'd forgotten all about me, but I did get a letter and a ticket to go to report at Blackpool. I was there training for some time, and I was ceased training because I had to go home on a 48-hour leave, and because we had burglars. And when I went home, the others carried on. So when I got back, the class I was in had advanced, and I had to join them again, and I was behind. So the officer called me in the office, and he said, Coombs CT, that's ceased training. So I was posted up to Scotland with a few other people, and at Arbroath, and they put me in the police. From there, only temporary at mine, not a regular policeman. And it came about in the papers that the Air Force wanted you to live as near as home as possible. And I put down for Northolt Aerodrome, just outside London, where I lived. And instead of that, they sent me to Newcastle, just outside Newcastle, a place called Long Benton. It was a mining village. I was there for a short time, and they sent me home on leave, pending going abroad. I went home on leave for about 2 weeks, I think it was, and then I had another ticket to say, report back to Blackpool. We were there, we didn't know when we were going abroad from there, and we kept on expecting it each day, and nobody would say where we were going or when. And we had to get out first light and catch a train. There was quite a crowd of us to Antrim, Liverpool, where we caught the boat. It was called the Mortam. Then, excuse me, we got on this boat, and I said to one of the sailors about sickness. He said, well, if you're not sick within 3 days, he said, you'll be all right. But he said, on the 3rd day, if you're sick, he said, you'll wish you'll be dead. And it will last you for 3 days, which was all true. That's how it happened. And we left Liverpool docks there, and one of the chaps on the boat, he decided to do his washing, and he got killed. He fell down the hold, hanging his washing up. And we pulled in at Malta. I think it was to wait for another load of boats. And they were dropping depth charges nearly all night there at Malta. And then we left a couple of days, I think, later to meet the rest of the convoy. And there was an aircraft carrying destroyers, and we were zigzagging all the time. And we pulled in at Sierra Leone on the Gold Coast. We were there for 2 or 3 days to refuel with oil. But we didn't take no water on because of the disease out there at the time. And we left there, and we carried on, and we thought we might be going to India. But we went to past Cape Town. We could see the Tabletop Mountain, and we pulled in at Durban. And we got out off the boat at Durban, and we went to a camp called Claremont, right close to a race course. We were there for a few days, or a couple of weeks I think, and we left there on another boat called the New Amsterdam. And then we completed our journey to, there was a scare on, and everybody had to go down below decks. And then it was all right, we came up again, and there was an aeroplane took off from the carrier, and when he came back to land on the boat, it must have tilted up because he got his front wheels on the edge and he just fell back into the sea. Nobody stopped for him, but I think that there must have been a destroyer picked him up later. And then we came to the desert. He couldn't pull in at the sea, the boat couldn't get in the quay. It was, you ferried from there onto the shore. We all got on, and when I saw that desert there, I thought, I don't know how I'm going to last here for 3 or 4 years. And but you get used to it. And I joined the squad. I had to go into a transit camp because the squadron that I was going to join was in Trincomalee, I think it was, in India, on an aircraft carrier coming back. And that's when I joined them, when they came back. They had Hurricanes, and they had a new gun, a secret weapon. It was actually it was a Bofor gun, anti-aircraft gun, modified to go under the wings of the Hurricanes. And they held 32 rounds of 40mm shells, and there was 3 trained, 3 of the airplanes that were serviceable to be used with these guns, and the pilots had been trained on them and had been shooting, targeting. And then Jerry was pushing down from Benghazi, Rommel was advancing down there, and we had to go, well, our flight had to go up there with these 3 aircraft to try and stop them. We got on the road, on the coast road, and after a time we pulled off because it was getting dark. And we had something to eat. We had an ex-pilot with us, and we had to keep, so I wouldn't lay on the ground because of the scorpions, so I laid on the one of the lorries with another chap. And after a time I heard a plane going over, and you could follow the noise of the engines, and I nudged the bloke next to me. I said to him, "It's aircraft." And he cocked his head. "Oh, it's one of ours," he said. "You can listen to the Merlins." And I followed it, and it went down the road, and I was looking, and I saw a light come up off the ground to this aircraft. And he turned and came back, and he opened his machine guns on us, and the front doors were open, and you could see inside. It was so low, you could see inside the aircraft. And we had machine guns on our lorries, and I wondered why they didn't open up. When I said to the officer in charge, I said, "Why couldn't we have?" I said, "We could have got him." He said, "We didn't want to give us our position away." Well, when those bullets were coming down, ricocheting off the ground, I ran in the opposite direction, and with no shoes or socks on. And when I came back, I was picking my way through the camel thorn. Anyway, that was that, and we got on the road again the next day, and we got up as far as Tobruk. But we went inland from Tobruk, and we had to sleep quite close to the aircraft. And we had another squadron with us. It was an Australian squadron, the Shark Squadron. And that used to go, take off first light. And we were so close to these aircraft that one of the Shark Squadron planes took a tent up, but the men were sleeping in it. And I had a shock at being like that. And then when it came back, it crash landed because the undercarriage was all caught up with this bit of tent. And from then, we operated from there against tanks. That's all we done. We were tank busters. And we lost an aircraft there, and we wanted to get these guns back because it was on the secret list. But the army wouldn't let any of us go in to get them. And they was going to get them themselves for us, and they got them off the aircraft. And after 2 or 3 more days, we were told to get out quick. And we left our bedboards there, got on the lorries, and it was away. And one of the fellows had deserted, and we heard gunfire behind us, but it appeared to be battleships and the Med outside Malta trying to get supplies through. And we got on the road. No, we didn't get on the road, the coast road. We got on the desert. We went across the desert, and then after a couple of hours we decided we'd stop and have a cup of tea. And one of the fellows had a can of paraffin, which he had for the light, the Bunsen burner. And by mistake he put paraffin in the water, for water, and we didn't have any tea. So we got on, and I think we lost a water bowser. One of the wheels went, a tyre burst I think, and we couldn't use it, so we had to push it over the side of Hellfire Pass. And when we got on further, just past a place called Merzimatru, and we came to Darba, a place called Darba, and we pulled in there for the night. And when we stayed there, I started to unpack for the food, I meandered off because I could see there used to be a camp, and it turned out to be a bomber squadron had moved back, you know, and I went and had a look at the stuff they left behind, and there was axes and stuff like that, and there was a big water tank. But it was flat. It wasn't like a petrol one, you know, and it was a big size. And I went back to the adjutant who was with us, and I said, we've lost a water tank, and I found the water tank. It's got a big tap on it, brass tap, and I said, if we can get some men together, we can put that on a van, on one of the lorries, which we did. And from then on, they called me a picker-up of unconsidered articles. Anyway, we had to retreat back to Alamein. They had barbed wire right across. They opened it up on the road, and we went through there, and there was brass hats there and everything. And we had to get onto the desert to a landing ground 89. They just cut out these drones, or landing grounds really. They're not drones, they're numbered. And this one was LG 89. And we were stuck there for a time. And then Jerry, we was right near the salt lakes, and Jerry had a push, and he tried to come through there, and he was stuck in, and he couldn't move, and a lot of the people got killed, his people, and wounded, and I think, if I remember rightly, they asked for a truce to pull their dead back and their wounded out. And that was that, and after a long time, we used to have reconnaissance plane, German ones come over, and we couldn't get a plane up at the moment to reach him. It was so high, until they stripped a Spitfire down, took the guns off, the cameras, everything that was not necessary, and he got up there above him, and he came down, and he was shot down by the rest of the Spitfires that was waiting for him. And then he parachuted out, the pilots, and then the army started to put round our landing ground artificial warm imitation AK guns. They used to put, at that time we had square petrol tins, and they used to stack them up and put a bit of tubing on, and from up there it used to look like, you know, anti-aircraft guns. And also dummy aircraft there, until our CO went see about it, and they were taken away because we were there. Our aircraft, and we didn't want to be bombed, they was a decoy, these artificial ones. And so then Montgomery started to build up his forces there. we couldn't sleep, we had foxholes, and our little tents was over it. And we had 3 French people coming, troops coming with their tanks, the Australians, the Canadians, the Poles, and we couldn't sleep because we was afraid that they were coming over us. And as you know, in September or October, they had the push, and we never slept that night because of the guns. And we started to advance, and then the Australians was going to go on the one side, and it left their flank open. And so they asked us to go forward where they were and cover their flank, which we did, and then it was successful. They got round, they got through, and then we got a signal to go to Darba, and Jerry would be out of there by the time you get there. We got halfway there, and we got a signal to say, get back quick, because he's still there. And eventually we got through there, and we got up as far as the Maris line. That was in through Libya to Tunisia. And there was a range of mountains there, stretched from the coast right into the desert. And we were told not to pay any attention what happened in the desert, because the Canadians were, New Zealanders, were going to go round and get behind it. And so they was found out, Jerry had found out that they were doing that, and they lined up to meet them. And we went and attacked the ship, the tanks, and helped them out, and they were saved through that. Then we got through, Montgomery had a bet with an American general that we would be over the Maris line into a place called Gabies by a certain date. And he was sending the Durham Light Infantry in, and these Gurkhas to fetch back prisoners they were there for, with no heads on some of them. And the Durham Light Infantry was being pushed in, and they lost a lot of men. And we got through eventually, and Montgomery came along to receive fortress. That was the bet. And he got this fortress and he used that to go backwards and forwards to Cairo. We got a call because the garrison of Free French was being lined up to be attacked. The I think it was the 15th Panzer Div was going to attack them. And we went and helped them out, and we won, or the pilots won, medal, like Grandad or something, these medals. There was quite a few of them. And we saved their lives because we routed these tanks, destroyed some of them, and these 25-pounders on these, no, I'm forgetting, on these Beaufortshire, by that time I should have said we've got rid of the Beaufort guns and we had rockets. And the rockets had 25-pound armour piercing. We used to screw them on the end of the rocket, and a 60-pounder high explosive. And one of these 25-pounders, if it entered a tank, it would ricochet round inside. And there was all blood and gore inside of one of those German tanks. And when we got through, we got to Infidaville, and Jerry packed it in then. Oh, our aircraft used to have to go and help out the First Army around Algiers way. And when I saw Giraud, he was a big French general. He got out of a plane where we were, and then we wondered what he was doing there. And then Jerry packed it up, and the CO said to us, well, we've come this far, go into Tunis. And we went into Tunis, and the army was there, and they had these big vats of wine, and they'd opened or broke the taps off because it was continuously flowing out, the wine was, and they were taking it in jerry cans. And I went into the throne room of the Sultan's palace and see all the finery there. And we were allowed in there. While we were going there, we passed a place called Infidaville. And we was in lorries. And as we was approaching it, there was a sapper or engineer, army engineer, for these land mines. And he trod on an anti-personnel mine, and they come up as far as your head, and they burst. And he was in a bad state, that bloke. Anyway, after all that, we was told we'd have to go back to base down in Cairo, near Sandar. And we used to, it was about 1,000 miles we had to trek back. And we used to pull in the side. We was on the road and right close to the coast. And we used to stop, have a meal, have a swim, and took our time getting back to the space, where we were told when we got back that we were going to Turkey. But at the last, we were going to be kitted out with warm clothing and that, and at the last minute it was cancelled because Churchill couldn't guarantee the Turks from being bombed, air raids and that. So after a time there, we got into a couple of Dakotas, and we went to Sicily. We landed in Sicily there, and then we went on to a place called Gratalia, just outside Naples. And while we were there, the volcano Vesuvius erupted, and our planes, the fuselage, was all peppered with tiny holes through the acid from the volcano there. We were there a time, and we moved on from there to Foggia. And we operated from there very little. And then we were told General, they'd bombed the roads, they bombed the railways, and they couldn't get through to Rome and that. And an American general wanted us to go to Corsica, which we did go, but we had to wait outside a school in Naples until we got the word that we could go. We was waiting for an escort. We had a tank landing craft. It was. We was going to get on, but we was going to have an escort of destroyer, I think. And we went past Anzio. You might have heard of Anzio, the battle they had there to get ahead, landed. But we got to Corsica, and we was quite near Ajaccio, but we had to go the far end to Bastia, which was the nearest point to France, where they were fetching their supplies round from France to Italy because they couldn't get them through on the land. And we operated from there, and one night we sunk 11, I think it was 11 boats, supply boats, and in between these boats they had guns on platforms. Anyway, we lost one plane, but to say that I remember when they were going to take off to do this raid, one of the pilots after a few minutes came back and he landed, and his fitter climbed up onto the wing and he said, what's the trouble? He said, I couldn't see a thing. Couldn't see a thing. You want to eat some more bleating carrots? So that was a bit of a laugh. But we did have a raid then because Jerry knew that we were operating from Corsica there. And one day we had to do a guard, and I went down with another chap to guard the aircraft, and there were some Americans there with their planes, and we saw them come down and start tying their aircraft down. And I said to this chap, I said, there's going to be a storm. I said, because they're tying their aircraft down. He said, what do you think we should do? I said, well, we can't do nothing. We were right away from our camp, and one of there was a storm, and they were swinging our aircraft around, and they were hitting objects and they were damaging the towers. And I was nearly on a charge, but at the same time I said, if we'd have left our post, we'd have been on a charge. So that was squashed. We had that air raid, and one of the chaps went through some barbed wire, and we had no shirts on. It was during the night, and it was all torn on us. It was terrible. We were made honorary members of the inshore squadron through what we'd done there. And they gave us 2 days to do what we wanted, and we went up in the mountains to the villages, and there was a village on the top of this place. And a couple of the other fellows stayed with the French people, and I stayed with an Italian. I didn't know an Italian until I was told later. And they weren't very popular, the Italians there. But on a Sunday morning, it was, the sun was shining lovely, and the children was being led down a path to the church. The church bells were ringing, the vicar or whoever he was swinging these sconces in the front there, and it was really like a film set, you know. And we came back to our camp, and I used to watch a farmer milking his sheep. And when I went to, only a few yards away really we were, and I said to the farmer's over there, he's milking sheep. No, he's not. I said, where he was hurting him, I suppose, and there was shit and muck going in there. Anyway, we had to fly back to Italy there, and when we got on these planes, the 2 Dakotas, one of them had to land in Sardinia, and we carried on into a big storm. And I thought, I hope we don't go through that. It was like a black void. And he didn't. He turned back and he went round the coast and entered the our place at Foggia there. It was not long after that, 2 or 3 days actually, my name came up on DROs, that's daily routine orders, and with 2 other names. And we were going to Yugoslav, a Viz, an island of Viz off the coast, and there was all partisans there. So we had to catch a 1,500 weight lorry to take us to, I don't know whether it was Brindisi or Bari, but we got there and we had to go to a naval headquarters. They'd taken over a hotel, and they told us to come back in an hour's time, and then we went back and come back another 2 hours time, and the 3rd time we went there they said, yes, there's a yacht out there, it's going tonight at 12. He said, get on that. But we had to hire an Italian to row us out to it, and that got my back up really, having to pay a bloke to row us. We got on this boat and there was all injured partisans who'd been recouped, and they were going back. We got on this, we got away, and we arrived at this little jetty, I think it was, on this island, right close to the coast of Yugoslav, and there was even children, little boys, guarding prisoners, marching them along, and us 3 got on the jetty there. We sat down. We didn't know what to do. And tied up at the side was 2 motor torpedo boats. And the sailor came out to us, he said, "You're right." I said, "Well, is there any Air Force people?" He said, "Yes, there's an Air Force lorry comes down here and collects these rations." And so he said, "Well, he won't be here yet." He said, "Come on board." And we went down onto this motor torpedo boat, and it was a cosy little cabin he was in, and he made tea, and he could have had anything, you know, toast. And he said, "We lost a gunner last night." He said, "You're an armourer?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "What about coming out with me, you know, with our boat? We have to go out every night round shooting up, you know, things amongst the islands." And he said, "You'll have to see your CO, get word from him." I said, "Oh, no me." I said, "He's back in Italy." So he said, "Well, I'll see our CO, see what he says." But anyway, that fell through, and I wasn't sorry. I didn't fancy going out on a motor torpedo boat beyond a machine gun. We got onto this, by the way, when we went to Corsica, we pulled into an RAF camp, and they didn't want to know us. They didn't have any food for us or any rations. So we went on further and we come to an American place. And they took us in, they fed us, and we slept with them that night. And they treated us quite well, but our own people didn't want to know us. Anyway, back in Viz, on this island, we were there about, well, we were supposed to be there 3 weeks, and then we would be relieved and come back to Italy. But after 3 weeks, we never saw any of our airplanes, and there was only an emergency landing field. There was me, an armourer, electrician, and a fitter 2E. And while we was there all this time, we never saw, well, we did see there was sandbags with the control officer in there. He was an ex-pilot, been grounded, and I used to go down and sit with him, and he'd get a message to say there'll be 300 liberators or armed fortresses coming over at a certain time, and with an escort of about 400 fighters, and they'll be coming over at a certain time there. And they did, they came over at that time, and there used to be an orderly officer up there with them. He had no bombs on, evidently, because he was moving about amongst them, keeping them up. And when they'll be coming back at a certain time. And when they did come back, a lot of them wanted to land, and they couldn't all land, and some of them was told, give them a fairy light, tell them to get back to base or bail out. And some of them did bail out, and the aircraft used to be flying round and round, and they'd come down in the water. We never saw them again. I don't know whether they were drowned with their parachutes. You're supposed to release yourself from a parachute when you're near water. And send for a fighter to come and shoot that plane down, which a couple of fighters came over and shot it down, but we never saw it shot down because we had a range of hills. We was in like a valley, and one plane was told right at the last minute to keep up. He couldn't land, and the side of his wing hit the mountain, and it just rolled over, and they was all killed. Another Liberator this time came in, and they was extending this runway, and it was all out of vineyards, all this, and it came in and it overrun it into this soft earth that was being extended, and it went up. A Liberator went up on its nose, and it was there for, well, it must have been 2 seconds, if that. And I heard a rat-tat-tat, and it was them trying to chop their way out. And it went over on his back. It didn't catch fire. Another one came in, and it was either short of petrol, these planes, or they'd been shot up. They'd wounded on board. The hydraulic system had gone. And it skewed, a fortress it was, it skewed round when it landed, and half of it was stuck out on the bit of the runway. And they had to chop that, in, what was hanging over, chopped it up. They chopped that off and just dragged it off the landing ground, or landing field. And there was lots of funny things that happened as well as that. Oh, a Spitfire came in, and one of these vines, the roots weren't taken up, and they sprung up, and his back wheel caught the Spitfire, caught this root, and it swung it round, and there were some prisoners of war, Italians, working at the side, and 2 were killed, and with this plane, and they weren't a mark on them. And there was others, all blood coming from them and wounded, and they were all right. They weren't. So we got these 2 people, 2 dead men, onto a lorry, on a van. It was a 1,500 weight, and you couldn't lay it properly. You had to put it on the sides, you know, the stretchers. There was on stretchers on the side there, and we said we'd take them to the hospital up in the hills, which we got up there. And there was an English doctor came out. He said, what have you got there? I said, 2 dead men. Oh, what the hell can I do with dead men? Take them away, take them back. So we took them back, and we laid them on the side of the road. And what happened to them, I don't know. The communists there, they wouldn't, we used to have a lady and a girl, a daughter, come round. She was a refined person, and they used to do her washing. And one day she came up and she said, we won't be coming again. She said, we've got to join the movement to be able to live. She said, to get food. And so that paid to our washing. And we were walking back to a camp one day, and one of these partisans came up to us. He left the farmhouse and he walked towards us and stopped us, and he said, you're English? And we said, yes. He said, we like the English, we like the Americans, he said. They released us from Sardinia when we were prisoners of war. So he said, I'd like you to come and have a drink at the farmhouse now, which we did. I didn't used to drink the wine, I wasn't fond of that, but I wanted some fresh water. And no sooner than we had a drink of water, then the door opened, and he was a commissary, and the commissar came in, who was in charge of the politics of the occasion. And they had a few words together, and he said to me, he said to us, he said, "I'm sorry, you've got to go." So we couldn't even get into a get-together when they was in a big barn having a dance. They wouldn't let us in there. They wouldn't let us intermix at all. And so we was there for 3 weeks, as I say, and we should have been relieved. And there was a big Savoia bomber that used to come there to take a plane back. A Spitfire, if they couldn't do nothing with it, they used to take the wings off and put the fuselage inside the bomb bay of this Savoia bomber, and with the wings at the side of it, and fly it back to where it's come from. And we thought we'd get a lift back, so we went up to this sergeant who was in charge of the transport there, and we said, "Could you let us have a lift back to Italy?" He said, "Yes, get on it next time it comes in." The next day, we was down there. There was 2 Dakotas coming. A Dakota and 2 Yak fighters came in, and when it landed, we weren't anywhere near it. We was going down to our place, and there were some partisans in the sides. They stopped us, stoy, that's halt, you can't go no further. Tito got out of the Dakota, and that's why we couldn't do anything, so we pushed off back. I've got a photo of him getting out of the aircraft, actually, and that put paid to that. And while we was thinking about getting on the Savoia bomber, the next day, 2 of our airplanes came in, and we run up to, you know, it was a CO and a flight officer. And we said we were thinking of coming home. He said, "You're not going back." He said, "We're all coming here." So that was that. I don't remember whether we left there by boat or plane. I think we must have left by boat. And when we got back, my name was up again on the DROs for Greece. And I went to the adjutant and I said, "Could you take me off that?" I said, "I'm expecting to go home any time now." I said, "And if I'm in Greece, I shall miss that boat." So he said, yes. He took me off. And I was still there when they came back. And they all had scabies. They had all their hair off, and I was in a state, and I thought, thank Christ I didn't go there. And a few days later, I used to see the dispatch rider and I'd say, "Oh, all right." He said, and one day he went like that. And that was that. I came home. I went home on leave for a fortnight, I think it was. And then I was posted to a place up in Derby on a bomber squadron. And then the wife had a baby, and she was taken ill, and they discharged me from Derby, from the army, from the Air Force, and that was the end of my career there. But there's lots of things that happened while I was there. Vesuvius in Italy, the Vesuvius was still belching out stuff, not only fumes. And while we was waiting at a college, we had to go to this college every day to get the news whether we got to go to Corsica. And we used to meet there, a crowd of us. And the little boy came up to me, he said, "Man, multi." And he took me to where there was a ditch. And when there's anything like fumes like that, you're not to get down in a ditch because of a night time the fumes go down. And this bloke had taken his belt off, put it behind his neck, took his trousers down and was getting, and he just fell forward on his face, dead, from the fumes. We couldn't do nothing there. So a lot of incidents happened otherwise.
With the hurricanes, I mean, how many hurricanes did you actually have on your squadron? I mean,
Well, there was 3 flights.
3 flight. Yeah.
Yes. Me and another armourer had one plane, and there was A, B and C flights. To a squadron, as a rule, there's only 9 aircraft to a squadron. But I forget now how many there was.
How did they actually get the aeroplanes out to all these places? I mean, to get them aboard, did they fly them or did
Yes.
they flew them?
They flew them so far, or they was taken by boat so far. And I think they, when I was waiting at this transit camp, they was on a aircraft carrier. And there was a place at Trincomalee, or some such name like that, in India. And I believe they used to be unloaded there and flew on from there, but I'm not sure now.
Did you actually lose many aircraft in those several years when you were away?
Yes. Some of them, one of the, or 2 of the pilots walked back. And I've got photos somewhere where it's just appearing on the squadron out from the desert. Yes, and one of them was flying low. Of course, they were low flyers to attack tanks. And one of them was over the sea, and he came a bit too low, and his propeller hit the bottom, and it was shallow water, and it hit the shingle, and he got killed. That was another aircraft gone. But I don't think it was dangerous flying in them times, in that particular thing. They were called Shitty 6, for because I was always in that. But I got round and I experienced it, and it's a thing I would like to have ducked out of. It was an experience.
What
Dodgy at times.
What squadron was it? What was your squadron number?
6.
Number 6 squadron?
Yeah.
Oh, 6 squadron.
Yeah.
Right, I got you. Yeah.
Now, they're now at Coniston. I've never been on that there. I've never been in England. That squadron was always abroad.
Right.
And I had a brother-in-law lived out in Egypt, in Heliopolis. He used to get in touch with me and said, could you come on leave? That was when we was retreated and it was a stalemate sort of thing, and I could get leave. And I used to go, I met him for the first time out there. I'd never seen him before. We arranged to meet, and when I met him, he was an officer, and he was in the Army of Occupation, and he had his crowd was all black, Indians or some such thing, and I used to go. I went on into his camp once, and I had a meal with him and his officers, and then they must have been friendly with our squadron because they all came to us, but I was never allowed, to mix on with them then.
What rank were you?
LAC.
Leading Aircraftman?
Yeah, and the CO, he was, I was on the committee for entertainment, and the Americans had put up in Foggia a big corrugated shed sort of thing, which was going to be used for them when we'd gone. And the CO, we had a meeting, and the CO said, I think I'll get in touch with the Americans because they had a lot of long-range tanks, and the boxes they were in were thick ply, better than the furniture that was being made in this country during the war, you know, wardrobes and beds and stuff. And he went to this camp, and I already knew a sergeant in the American Air Force. He got talking to me when they were building this, and he must have thought I was, you know, a sergeant or something like that. And he invited me to his camp, and he even sent a jeep to pick me up and take me there. And we sit there having a drink, and then one day when I went down there, or he sent for me to go to his place, I couldn't entertain him. He asked me if there were some generals coming to check up on these equipment, and they had a spare jeep. Could we change it for a generator? I couldn't think of a word. He would let us have this jeep if we could have a generator from us. And he had a jeep too many on the squadron, so we couldn't let him have a so we never had that. But I said to the CO when he came back and said he couldn't get no these boxes to make table tennis tables out of. And I said, well, let me have a lorry and I'll go down there. I didn't tell him I know him, but I went down there and they loaded up a lorry with these boxes, and I got a handful of cigars from this sergeant, and I came back to our squadron, and I went to the caravan where the CO was, and the padre was in there with him, and he said, how'd you get on? I said, I got a load of boxes. I said, would you like a cigar? I offered him a cigar, which they accepted, and that was only one of the funnier sides of the life. But 6th Squadron was always out in Egypt, and after the war, when NASA told the English there to get out, they had to come back, and they was up here. I've never been there, but I've met a bloke who was on that squadron, and I joined a businessman's club in Probert. Have you heard of Probert? It's a professional businessman's club. I joined that, and there was a squadron leader there who was ex-squadron leader, and he said, he was introduced to me, he said, ex-Air Force. So he said, what squadron was you in? I said, 6th Squadron. So 6th Squadron, there are a lot of bloody fools on that squadron. And I thought, well, you're not so bright yourself, you know, to say a thing like that to a stranger. So I never had anything more to do with him. And I left it afterwards because they was elderly people belonging to this club, and you sat down at dinner, and you've got a bloke here bent over like that, and this one is, you know, they were, the people I knew belonged to the club, they were on other tables. And once you get a crowd of you used to, I give it up. I packed it in. I didn't go again. But I would like to have got in touch with these people here, because I had some photos that they would have been interested in. And when I was on the desert, I happened to be assembling a rocket. You had to put the fins on and the heads, whatever they called for, but they wanted explosive or armour piercing. And next thing I knew, I had a letter from my family saying my photo's in the paper in England. It was in the Mirror. Me assembling a rocket with another chap, he's standing there holding the rocket up, and I'm adjusting the bottom. We put saddles on them, and they used to be like broomsticks under the aircraft on a steel plate, and 4 sets of broomsticks, and these saddles used to go over like that, and we used to have to wire them to the rail so that if you didn't wire them with a certain gauge copper wire, they would just, when you plugged them in, you had to plug them in, and if you didn't put that wire in, when he fired, a rocket would come off like that. Whereas the tension, and it would break this wire when it built up enough power, and it would come on a straight line, and it could be harmonised to hit a tank with his sights in the cockpit. And I used to have to look after the, not only that, but in the aircraft there's a film thing, button. Camera gun, yeah. And I used to take the camera out and hand it in, put the date on and the aircraft number. And they can't come back and say they've shot the tank up and it's been alight, blazing. They got the camera. See, they can't. They got the camera one on the joystick. They didn't have wheels like that then. And on the throttle, they used to have a button on the top for the rockets or whatever. And I used to test the, see how much film was in there. Then there was the, that was the film footage indicator, and there was another FFI, the friend or foe indicator, and that was under the, just inside the aircraft, and underneath the, sticking out of the aircraft like, was a stirrup, so that he could put his foot in to get onto the wing and into the cockpit. And if you pulled it too hard, it would blow up the friend or foe indicator.
I've got about 4 minutes left on that film.
Yes.
And that's done an hour then. So if there's any other things you can think of you want to say to fill that 4 minutes up. I mean, did you ever have any rockets fire when the aeroplanes were on the ground?
No, but both are gone, yes. It was accidentally fired, and the recoil, you know, of that gun, well, it didn't damage anybody. It didn't hit anybody. Fortunately, it had blown their head off. But we never had any serious accidents like that. And we had 3 guns in the wings, but were never used. And I used to, if I took the cowling off on the wing to get the guns there to, you know, check them and that, I used to take the skin off my knuckle with the recoil on the edge, and they used to give me some ultraviolet red, because if I ever cut myself or I got a blister on my feet and leg, I used to have to rub that on. But I guarantee, if you cut yourself out there, it turns septic. It's got to turn septic before it gets better. It's then you get dysentery when when the Free French left us.